December 1941. The United States was reeling from the attack on Pearl Harbor, focusing all its fury and resources on the Pacific. But while America looked west, a silent, unseen menace was already approaching its eastern shores. Grand Admiral Karl Dönitz, commander of the German U-boat fleet, saw America's entry into the war not as a threat, but as a golden opportunity. He knew the U.S. coastline was utterly unprepared, its shipping lanes unprotected, and its cities ablaze with light. Dönitz called his plan Operation Paukenschlag, or Operation Drumbeat. Just 5 long-range German Type 9 U-boats were dispatched across the Atlantic. Their mission was to unleash an unprecedented wave of destruction right off the American East Coast, from Nova Scotia to Florida. What followed was a massacre. In the first 7 months of 1942, the German U-boats sank hundreds of Allied ships, sending millions of tons of vital supplies to the bottom of the sea. The crews of the U-boats called this period the Second Happy Time. American historians would later call it America's Second Pearl Harbor. This is the story of how 5 German submarines almost crippled the American war effort before it even began. On January 13, 1942, the silence was broken. U-123, commanded by the ruthless Kapitän-Leutnant Reinhard Hardigan, sank the British tanker Cyclops off Nova Scotia. The attack had begun. The success of Operation Drumbeat was built on staggering American unpreparedness. Despite urgent warnings from the British, the U.S. Navy was convinced that the U-boats could not operate so far from Europe. The U.S. East Coast remained brightly lit. Cities like New York, Miami, and Norfolk shone like beacons. Merchant ships sailing independently up and down the coast were silhouetted perfectly against the city lights, making them sitting ducks for the surfacing U-boats. The coastal communities, focused on the Pacific War, resisted implementing blackouts, believing the war was thousands of miles away. The U-boat commanders were astonished. They sank tankers carrying oil needed for the war machine, freighters carrying steel and supplies, and sometimes even used their deck guns to save their valuable torpedoes. The loss rate was immediate and catastrophic. In that first month alone, German submarines sank dozens of ships, almost all within sight of the American shore. As the initial 5 U-boats returned, Dönitz quickly sent more. The medium-range Type 7 U-boats were now supported by the deployment of the Type 14 Thor. Milk cows. Large U-tankers that refueled and rearmed the U-boats at sea, extending their patrol time exponentially. The U-boat threat spread into the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean, targeting the vital oil routes from Texas and Venezuela. The American defense was paralyzed. The U.S. Navy, unprepared for anti-submarine warfare, ASW, lacked adequate escorts. Most of its destroyers were either in the Pacific or escorting convoys to Britain. The few available patrol aircraft and coastal cutters were simply not effective. The result was a continuous 7-month-long slaughter. By May 1942, losses peaked at over 100 ships sunk in that month alone across the region. General George C. Marshall, the U.S. Army Chief of Staff, stated the situation was as serious as the war itself. The Axis was winning the tonnage war, sinking ships faster than the Allies could build them. Without a reliable supply line, the planned invasion of Europe could not happen. Faced with disaster, the American war machine was forced to adapt. Lessons long learned by the British and Canadians were finally adopted. Mandatory blackouts. Coastal cities were finally ordered to dim their lights, robbing the U-boats of their easy night targets. The convoy system. Merchant ships were grouped into heavily protected convoys. This concentrated the targets, but also concentrated the escorts, forcing U-boats to face armed attack. ASW innovation. New dedicated patrol vessels were rushed into production, and technology like HFDF, Huff Duff, which could pinpoint U-boat radio transmissions, and improved sonar and radar began to be implemented. The introduction of the convoy system in the summer of 1942 immediately choked the U-boat Seifitro Oki Quadintro Feet, say happy time. Admiral Dönitz soon realized the easy hunting was over. He withdrew the U-boats from U.S. coastal waters, shifting the battle back to the mid-Atlantic Gap. By the end of 1942, the massacre was contained. The U-boats had sunk over 600 ships, but the tide was finally beginning to turn against them. The first 7 months of 1942 exposed a critical weakness in the Allied defense and demonstrated how close Hitler came to choking off the lifeline to Britain and the Soviet Union. The Allied victory in the Battle of the Atlantic, secured by 1943, was a triumph of industrial output, technology, and sheer endurance. It was a victory often fought far from public view, where thousands of merchant mariners and naval personnel sacrificed their lives in the frigid, oil-slick waters. Their courage ensured that the vital supplies crossed the ocean, allowing the Allies to build up the strength needed for victory in Europe. The U-boats failed to starve Britain, but the lessons learned during Operation Drumbeat remain a chilling reminder of the constant, invisible threat on the open sea.